एवरीवन, वेलकम टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल फोरमोस्टली लर्निंग। और आज हम बात करने वाले हैं पॉडकास्ट में साइबर गार्ड के बारे में। तो बेसिकली व्हाट इज अ साइबर लॉ एंड लाइक राइट क्या होते हैं डिजिटल सिक्योरिटी के बारे में। ये पूरा का पूरा जो पॉडकास्ट है ये डेडिकेटेड प्रोफेशनल साइबर सिक्योरिटी के लिए और लॉ वालों के लिए और बिजनेस लीडर एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप एंड स्टूडेंट एज वेल। तो हमारे साथ है पखी गर्ग इज ऑल्सो ही इज अ फाउंडर ऑफ अ WESF. They start the 2019, right? Okay, and they have also the 4 year experience with the researcher and writer. So, welcome, Pakhi.
Thank you very much, Chetan. So, hi everyone. My name is Pakhi Garg, and as Chetan already introduced about me, I am the co-founder of World Cybersecurity Forum, which is a technological consultancy, and there we talk about the digital rights of the people. Apart from that, we train them and provide various kind of a workshop in regard to the cyber laws and the cybersecurity. Talking about my educational background, I am a LLB and PG diploma degree holder from the Indian Law Institute in Cyber Laws. So this is a bit about me.
Okay, thank you. पकी जैसा आपने बताया कि आपने लॉ कर रखा हो, आप एज अ ओन को-फाउंडर है फोरम की। सो लाइक आई जस्ट इन लाइक एक पर्सनली क्वेश्चन है कि जब आपको क्या मोटिवेट किया इसमें एज ए स्पेसिफिक करने के इन टर्म्स से लाइक साइबर सिक्योरिटी लॉ एंड सिक्योरिटी।
So, Chetan, since my ninth standard, I was too much into IT, information technology, as a subject. So, when I was moving ahead in 11th, 12th standard, so there were certain languages known as C++. At that time, there was C++ that was introduced in our course. That was a bit difficult. We couldn't grasp it, but I was always into a notion that I should know about it. And then eventually, I got the opportunity while I was completing my bachelor's in humanities with the information technology as one of my subjects to read more about it. Then I eventually went through it, and but since childhood, like since ninth standard, it always intrudes me that why isn't there any kind of a degree which actually talks about the law plus the cyber security part. However, till that time, I was not sure that if any kind of a degree or diploma exists until and unless one very fine day in somewhere around 2015, my mother came up with a magazine where she showcased me that there is one certain degree which actually talks about the cyber laws. Now, cyber law means at that moment of time, IT related laws, digital rights related laws, because that's what a clear understanding where we are talking about the digital rights, but in the sense of the law itself. So that's motivated me, and at that moment of time, on the basis of the merit, I got selected in Indian Law Institute to study the PG for the cyber laws, and that was a totally a different kind of a experience where I learned a lot about each and everything, not just the basics of what the computer is, but also the complexities and various intricacies about the IT Act at that moment of time, because there were no other law. So there was only IT Act. Apart from that, e-commerce laws were there, and many other things that we read about how investigation happens, how these things happens. So now I was more into it. That's after that I did my LLB. So this is how my journey into cyber law started.
Okay, so like जैसे आपने बताया आप एज अ को-फाउंडर भी हो और इंडिविजुअल भी आपने काफी सारे आपने लोग हैं, तो कैन यू प्रोवाइड द ओवरव्यू अबाउट द की साइबर लॉ so that individual and businessmen should be aware?
Yes. So basically, there are very rights. Now it depends on where you are staying or to which country do you belong. For example, currently, if I talk about Indian laws, then we have two kind of laws. Majorly, the Information Technology Act, which was passed in 2000, and then the Digital Protection Data Personal Act, that is just received its assent from the president in August 2023 only. Now, these two are the primary legislations in Indian context for the Indian citizens, basically, when their personal data is in the talks. Now, if I talk about the people who are the part of the EU, for example, European Union countries, then of course GDPR is applicable to them. That's a kind of a centralized or a federal kind of a law, plus any other kind of a local law of their own countries, because EU is as we all know, EU is a group of many nations, right? So GDPR is applicable for every EU country plus their own local laws of their each and every country. Apart from that, when I talk about the US, then of course in US also there is no federal law like GDPR, but Californian citizens or consumers. Then CCPA is one such act, California Privacy Consumer or Privacy Act, that is applicable to them. The same laws is with the Virginian citizen itself. So, in whatever country you are, that law will be applicable to you. It's very simple. And whatever that law pertains, whatever that act contains in regard to your rights, of course, you have all the rights. Now, the major thing that we need to understand over is that the right or the wrong, whether you are on the right part or you are on the left part of the world, somehow or the other, the rights are same. There's a very few differences in the rights of the various laws or jurisdiction. However, one thing we need to note about it, that the definition of adult is different in every jurisdiction. For example, in India, we consider adult somebody who's above 18 years old. In EU countries, it's above 16. And in US countries, in some parts of the US, it is 13, and in some parts, it's 16. And in some other kind of a countries, again, it varies. In some countries, it's 16. In some countries, it's 18. So now this is something that we need to always keep in mind while we are reading those particular laws, that what is the data principle or the data subject, or what is the age of the adult and mentioned in that particular law.
लाइक जैसे आपने बताया कि हर एक इंडिविजुअल के लिए और लाइक हर एक बिजनेस के लिए इन लोग के लिए अवेयर होना जरूरी है. तो लाइक हाउ हैव प्राइवेसी लॉ इन्वॉल्व टू द एड्रेस द चैलेंजिंग बेस्ड ऑन द digital technology?
So basically, when we talk about the evolution, so evolution doesn't happen in a single day, not even a decade. It happens, it takes centuries sometimes. It takes more than a decade, more than 30 years or 40 years maybe, because as I can recall, the world's first data protection law was somewhere around in 1970. And that was of Germany itself. That was the world's first data protection law. Now, can you imagine 1970 to 2018? 2018, I'm quoting in context to the GDPR. So it takes how much time to actually evolve? Because, of course, at that moment of time, EU became the first region who were evolving these kind of laws. Because after the first law of Germany, that is somewhere around in 1970 or 77, then there were several other laws in several other parts of the EU. So EU is always leading in that regard. It's not US, it's not Russia, it's not any other subcontinent or any other country, but it's EU. So they worked on various OECD guidelines, they come up with various directive principles, and then they come up with the GDPR. So you can see the evolvement. So this is how any law actually comes into the picture. We cannot say that law became law in just one day. It takes n number of sessions, it takes n number of public consultations, consultation from the bureaucrats, from the parliaments itself, from the lower house or the higher courts. So these are the things, these are the phases that actually makes a law. And of course, the rapid increase in the technology is also one such major factor that we sometimes encounter. For example, AI these days. Have we thought 5 years back, we were aware that artificial intelligence is a concept, or VR is a concept, or AR is a concept. But we are not aware that, okay, fine, as soon as the COVID ends, we have to start making laws on the artificial intelligence. Right now, again, EU has become the first group of countries which has enacted the EU AI Act just now. They are into a public consultation call and it's almost final. So this is how as soon as the technology evolves, as soon as the technology revolves around itself, the new laws will come definitely into the picture.
Okay. And like what would you advise, जैसे आपने बताया कि day में technology update हुई. So as a business owner, what would you advise to the businesses to balance about the data and privacy?
So, of course, first and foremost important pointer is that they need to work with the legal counsels, with a dedicated team, which is only looking forward to the data privacy things only, so that they can actually get a hands-on on the latest going advancements in various kind of a law. Because if the technology is also evolving, the law is also changing on a regular basis. We cannot say that just because I have read something 6 months back, it might be same today as well. So this is the first and for the foremost step that a government, organization should take, that they should be aware of the laws. Second, they should be very familiarized with the concept of privacy by design. They should implement it in their work so that they can avoid any kind of a disruption. Again, very important aspect that they need to look forward is that if they are taking any kind of a personal data, they are collecting it, sharing it, or whatever they are doing it, they should clearly state the purpose of that particular personal data to their data subjects or the data principals, because they have ultimately the right to know how their personal data is being covered or protected. Apart
And
from that,
yes,
consent is a very important aspect. Taking consent with the proper notice, providing them with their rights is one foremost step that the organizations or the businesses needs to take. Also, conducting the PIAs, that is privacy impact assessments, to mitigate any kind of a risk on the personal data of the data subjects can also help them in avoiding any kind of a data breach.
okay. As a legal expert for the incident response, how does the legal landscape influence the incident response or planning the cybersecurity?
So basically, Chetan, when we talk about the incidents response, basically it means that if any kind of a data breach happened, or if any kind of a data steal or any bad thing happened to the personal data of the data principals which were actually collected and forwarded or processed by the data fiduciaries or the data controllers, we can say, then of course, what kind of a plan do they have? Now it's a compulsion as per the law. In every jurisdiction, they have separate kind of a law in context to the incident response. But that is what an incident response means. So when they come up with any kind of a plan, they have to get it documented. So they have to verbally, not just verbally tell it to somebody or record it, but they have to write it and then share it in their systems. That if this kind of a breach had happened, then these are the steps that we as an organization will be taking care of to safeguard the data. Because the first and the primary condition is that if the data has been lost, then what will their responsibility be? How are they sufficient enough to mitigate the risk? Because for some of the instances, they might be able to recover that data, but and stop that in the middle. But in some attacks, they might not be able to, because these days, as I have told you, that as the technology is advancing, hackers and scammers are also advancing in their ways. They are using AIs, or they are using malwares, or any other kind of attacks, and maybe that's a new for an organization, so they might not be well equipped. However, they always recommend the proper security measures that can be taken, or to put that layer so that the personal data or any kind of a sensitive information of the data principals, or even if it belongs to the organizations, can be safeguarded. So I think that is quite important. So documentation is important, its implementation is important. Now, if so, each and everything will definitely be submitted to the supervisory authority or to the government authority, basically. So this is known as the incident response plan, and there are several methods of several organizations how they eventually act to that particular incident response. It cannot be one universal method. It differs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and of course from organization to organization. However, in short, they have to adhere by the law in terms of the providing the incident response.
Okay. So, like, what are the role regulation play in us, like, shaping how organization prepare, like, how to respond the cyber threat?
So basically, my half of the answer has been covered in the
Right.
incident response. So again, retaliating myself in a different way, I'm just trying to. So when there's any kind of a data breach, firstly, the organizations are always ready to tackle it. It should be their prime responsibility to tackle it. However, again, in some jurisdiction, it depends that firstly they have to control the damage. Then they have to inform the government authorities or the related boards, whosoever are competent authorities who are looking forward to that kind of a thing. In India, it's known as ICERT, basically Incident Computer Emergency Response Team. If any kind of a data breach has happened, the organizations will require to inform it to the ICERT. In EU nations, as per the GDPR, it's supervisory authority. But firstly, they have to control the damage. Now, in another jurisdictions, sometimes they also made it compulsory, to inform it to the data principals or to the data subjects whose data has been lost or compromised. For example, in China, it's quite important because right now only they have developed a new 4-tier system to avoid any kind of a data breach for the organization. So they have limited time. Now, the time limitation is very important. For example, any kind of a breach has happened right now. So it's my prime responsibility, being the owner of the company or being the data protection officer or the company or into the somebody who's into the data field, that I have to control the damage, or I have to inform the supervisory authority accordingly that this is the kind of the data that has been lost. Time also plays a very crucial role. I can't just settle down and just wait that the data is being lost or the data is being recovered. By the time I have to inform them as soon as possible. China has made this mandatory only that if any kind of a big data, which is somewhere around 10 millions, if I can really recall correctly. So if there's the compromise of the data of approximately 10 million people, then they need to inform their competent authorities or their government bodies within 10 minutes. Now that's what something I applaud for, because they are actually taking care about their data subjects very seriously. They are actually considering that on a very serious note. But 10 minutes is not a prescribed period which has been ever been mentioned in any kind of the laws. So right now there is no specific period, only it's written that as soon as possible. So these are the certain factors that actually organization needs to be very careful. They should always work on the security methods. They should update their security methods, because if they don't, then of course they have to ready to bear the consequences. And India right now, the biggest penalty, the highest amount of penalty that the government will be imposing upon the organizations if there's any kind of a breach that had happened is 250 crores right now. Firstly, in the bill, it was 500 crores, but now they have reduced it to the 250 crores in the act. So right now it's 250 crores only. So these are certain aspects that these organizations need to work on to safeguard their data subjects, right?
Like as a digital right, the contents of a digital right, like where do the line blur between the security measure and like the individual freedom?
Security measure and the individual freedom, right? Now, they are, if I say that there's a very fine line actually. So, for example, I'm an individual, you are an individual, and the people watching out there are also individual. Each individual has their own rights, which has been given by the laws. Apart from the rights, we all have our moral responsibilities as well, right? We cannot stalk somebody on Facebook, on Instagram, or on any other thing. That's not just a moral right, but it's also a law. And apart from that, when I talk about the interconnection between the security side and the individual rights, then it plays a pivotal role in defining what the rights are. Because security is a kind of a method or kind of a process which is actually safeguarding you from oversharing or from harming anybody else's confidentiality or sensitivity in that context. So that's a very beautiful bridge between those two things. One cannot exist without another.
Right.
For example, law cannot exist without security. Security cannot exist without law. Because for everything, whatever we do, whatever we see, a law is attached to it.
Okay.
Right now, we are talking online, then of course, a law is attached to it.
Okay. So like how the know about the policymaker is stick between the balance between the protecting nation and the security despite the digital right.
So the policymakers, if I would rather say that they are the government bodies who are actually taking care about a lot of laws these days in the country. It's not just because of the technological advancement, but they also feel that the world is moving ahead within the time. So we have seen a rapid growth of the users who are on now internet. I'm talking about internet, not the social media right now.
Right.
So even if we are using the internet, we have the rights. They knew that. And I think at that moment of time, the role of the policymakers will eventually grow, because they have to secure your rights as well. They have to secure my rights as well. And India being a huge population, it's very difficult to, connect the dots and do that.
Right.
However, now the government organizations or the policymakers are these days collaborating with the private organization, not just to make laws, because of course the government body is the one who actually makes the law, the parliament is the one who actually makes the law, and then it receives its assent with the president to make it any kind of a law. Now they are collaborating with the industry specialist, with their partners, the private government partnerships, to train people, to let them know about their rights, not just right, to know, provide them with the greatest knowledge of the time,
Okay.
because we are living in the internet era.
Right.
We are no longer traditional. We are now becoming a internet era these days. Internet is important. Even during any kind of a online class, internet is important. Whether
Right.
you are just surfing or whether you are doing any kind of a task, internet is important and it's playing a very greater role. We can't think it that even in a second how many new users are connected to the internet.
Right.
So at that time, to make up the knowledge, to give a lot of the information to the people to safeguard their rights, they are collaborating with the private industry partners. For example, NASCOM is one such example. While the government was making the national strategy on AI, they connected with the NASCOM for that. And NASCOM being the one of the giant techs in India, they have actually come up with several other programs. These days, even government is also collaborating with Google or Microsoft or Infosys for for launching up these kind of a programs. So I think it's quite beneficial for everybody to know.
As you mentioned, like internet is a globally important. So as a
Yes.
globally represented, see how the cybersecurity law is a very globally and challenging in the present of the international for a like collaboration and other things. So like what will the learn about from them? Any
So
example,
Chetan,
anything?
yes, as you know that internet is global,
Right.
right? It has no boundaries. We are sitting here right now in India and we might serve the website which has its more of the users, or more of the website is belongs to some US citizen, or may belongs to some other kind of other part of the world. Now, as when we say that internet has no boundaries, so it means that somehow it's opening doors to the crimes as well. If it's providing me the information I want, it is also providing me with bad information. When I
Right.
say bad information, it means harmful information. Maybe I am referring to some searches or some methods so that I can hack into somebody's phone or computer. So at that moment of time, it became a prime responsibility of not just the one nation, but all the nations across the globe to come up with some kind of a law, some kind of a convention, or some kind of a consultation in regard to that particular law so that this problem can be tackled. Now, it's not like that the governments are not thinking in that aspect, but the major factor somehow is that, cultural difference is one such thing that plays a
Right.
very strong role over here, because maybe in my country child pornography is totally prohibited in India. Maybe it's not prohibited in some other part of the country. Now if I expect them to prohibit the same thing, tomorrow they'll be also expecting me to prohibit certain thing which is not totally illegal in my own nation.
Right.
So that is the biggest challenge over here. However, now Cybercrime Convention or the Budapest Convention is one such convention which many countries are signatory to. India is also signatory to it in 1999. So this was a convention, world's first convention, you would say, that actually talks about the cybercrime, dedicatedly cybercrime. So that was one such effort made by many governments or made by the global government to come up and make them sign, so that maybe many other kind of laws are in the same line. So as India is signatory, so on the other countries. So that's why do you remember the line I said that somehow or the other the rights of the citizens are more or less same. Maybe in our country we only have 4 or 5 rights, the digital rights I'm talking to, but maybe in some nations somebody has 6 or 7 rights, but that doesn't make any difference. But we would say that we are also hoping for the best, that apart from the jurisdictional differences, cultural differences, maybe this problem comes to an end. But the laws are making it stricter, the countries are also realizing this problem, and maybe in near future we come up with some kind of a stringent laws or conventions that are applicable for the world. But again, we cannot 100% say that it will definitely come, because if it comes, it has its own kind of challenges.
As a future then, like, what is the emergency then do you see, like, in terms of a cyber security law and digital security?
Could you please repeat your question? I couldn't
Like,
get it.
as a future then, what is the emergency then do you see, like, inter intersection of a cyber security law and digital security?
Just a sec, let me read the question. I could not get it. What emerging trends do you foresee in the intersection of
Right,
cybersecurity laws and digital security, right?
right,
Okay. Talking about the first emerging trend right now, we already seeing a lot of emerging trend of the AI, artificial intelligence. In the near future, I am 100% sure that there will be more emerging laws. For example, VR and AR, augmented realities and virtual realities. I'm sure there might be some other kind of reasons or some other kind of information that has come into the picture which become challenge. Then apart from that, I feel that AI, VR, AR, robotics is one such greater challenge,
right,
not just for one nation, but for a whole, total humankind. So it will eventually also become a challenge to, to penalize at that moment of time when we talk about the cyber. And there are because AI is connected to each and everything. So we even also don't forecast that what some could of the challenges that could have happened, because maybe some kind of a new malware or ransomware attack will be introduced. Maybe phishing calls will get more into touch. So these are certain small things, because every day we read that kind of a cyber crimes, that I even feel that does this even exist? Because we are not telling our OTPs, we are not sharing our passwords, we are not sharing our personal information, still our bank accounts got hacked.
right.
So we can't even think about what kind of a world we are delving into. So technology has brought in a light, but I feel that it has brought more.
Okay. So, like, how should the individual and organization prepare for the future challenges?
So I think, as I have mentioned, that they should always prepare themselves. They should always update themselves with the latest ongoing laws. That is the first and the foremost important thing. However, as nobody has seen the future, and of course, as we are seeing a lot of growth in the technology, so you never know what kind of a thing will come tomorrow to you. And of course, even if the law does not exist, what will we do? Will we are we eligible to go and make a complaint about it? What will happen if there's no such law exists in the world about that particular problem? So of course they shall be very much peculiar about what they are doing on the internet. They have to save themselves. We need to, being a internet user, we have to understand not just our rights but also our responsibilities and duties towards us, towards others, and towards the laws. If there's not any kind of a law which has been made up for now, it doesn't mean that it won't be made up. It doesn't mean that I get the right to say certain things on my social media account. So apart from these, when I talk about the businesses, of course they need to develop more R&D, research and development
Right.
teams, so that they can have that proper kind of a research of what kind of a trends will they be looking forward to, because I cannot expect an individual to be as much as equipped or knowledgeable like the organizations could have, because they have the resource, they have the money, they have the time, so they can definitely involve them. And in future the government and the private sector can definitely collaborate, or consultancies can definitely collaborate with the government sector to make people more aware about their rights and usages of the internet.
So, like, if anyone has a, like, anyone will pursue this career, this field, so what to the recommendation for that person?
Sorry, you are asking
Like,
about the course.
right, what will the pursue the as an individual, as an organization, will we teach the cyber law? So, which kind of a cyber law and, like, which kind of a degree is pursue the individual? businessman?
So, Chetan, if somebody is looking forward to make a career as a cyber lawyer or a data privacy counsel, then of course a LLB degree is must. Law degree is must. Whether it's a 5 year program or a 3 year program doesn't make difference, but a law degree is must. Apart from that, very good understanding about the cyber law should be there. Now, to attain the cyber law, you can definitely take, many colleges and universities are providing the diploma degrees, the 1 year program. But my total recommendation is that please take only that kind of a degree and diploma, which eventually has some kind of a value attached to it.
Mm.
Just for taking up this degree doesn't make any difference to your career, because in that case nobody will get to know that you actually have the knowledge, and of course if you have the interest in that particular degree. Apart from that, if somebody cannot take any kind of a regular classes, because there are many people who might not take the regular
Right.
classes, that they might be indulged with some other kind of a work or some jobs or any other aspect, then of course they can opt for some kind of a small short term courses in that field. So my own organization provides short-term courses in regard to the cybercrime, cyber laws, IT Act, DPTP, whatever it might be. And when I talk about the degrees and diplomas, of course, NALSAR is one such that provides the diploma. And apart from that, Indian Law Institute is one such, and many other more colleges and universities across India, they are providing this. And many people who wants to opt into the academics, they can of course do the masters and then opt for PhD. So this is a small aspect of how they can go ahead. Apart from that, there are many international certifications, but again, my wholehearted request is that you should only pursue the international certificates when you are eventually ready with the fundamentals, when you are eventually clear with the kind of a data privacy fundamentals, because they cost very high. They cost somewhere around a lakh or even more than that. So there is no point in wasting this kind of a amount if somebody is not ready to take up the challenges. This field is not for somebody who's only into law. This field is also for somebody who has the keen interest in the cybersecurity. I also doesn't belong to typical background of cybersecurity, but yes, I am regularly upgrading myself, and I had the subjects that is information technology. I know a bit about machine learning languages and high level languages. So this is how you can definitely prepare yourself. Please do not ignore cyber security. That is also a very important aspect, because if a client comes to you, then of course you cannot say that I don't know about cyber security. I'm only a cyber lawyer. So these are something that I will definitely recommend to somebody who's looking forward to make their career.
Okay, I guess this podcast dedicated for cyber law and uh, our audience will be enjoy the podcast. What would the recommendation and what you think the outcome of this podcast?
I think this podcast is ideal for every individual who's interested in knowing more about the digital rights, who's more interested in knowing how to make a career out of it, who's more interested in knowing various kind of laws, and of course for the businesses, how they eventually go ahead with the process, the incidents response plans. So I think for every that buddy, the this kind of a podcast is eventually too good and too helpful. And of course, thanks to you for organizing such an amazing podcast, because I feel that this is a field where the knowledge is totally lacking, because I counsel at least 3 or 4 people every day, and whenever I talk them, they are quite blank in terms of their career, in terms of the knowledge. So I think that's the only recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Pakhi, for joining us and
Thank you
providing
very
the
much.
information.